All right, we're recording. I'll share my screen. Let's go into my VS Code here. I've got this PryQ stuff. Let's dump that. All right, so yesterday we were talking about what we were doing here in this. Oops, let me get this out of the way. What we were doing in our login method, essentially. I've changed it up a little bit from what we had yesterday because I felt the try catch stuff was a little bit much, and it was definitely I could tell that it was causing you guys some understanding gaps here. So here's what I landed on when I was refactoring it. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to try to find this user by email, and if that user is null, we're just going to send back a status of 400. Okay. Moving down a little bit, we're going to get the result of comparing the password that we're given with the password hash that was in the database. And then if that result was false, then we're going to send that status of 400 again. Okay, that's what send status means. It means we're just sending a status code. There's not really any data to what we're sending back. Finally, we're just creating that token as we were doing. And then this is us adding the token to a cookie so that we'll have access to it on subsequent requests. We don't necessarily need to include the token in what we're sending back to the client side because as we were talking about, really the token's only going to be available server side. It's just going to be in this cookie. Okay. All right, so now we need to move back to the front end. We've taken care of most of the stuff here on the back end. Actually, maybe before we do that, let's just create a function to log somebody out, just in case we need that. So I'm going to create a logout function. It's going to take in the rec and res. Okay, and all we really need to do is we need to clear that cookie that we set. Okay, so I can say res dot clear cookie, and then I could tell it what is the name of the cookie that I want to clear, and the name of that cookie was just token, right? And then after we're done with that, we could send back something to the client just saying it worked. We'll just say status success, whatever. Okay, so since I didn't really need the request at all, I can just underscore that if I want. It's really just a placeholder parameter at this point, not being used. Okay, and then I need to add that to my routes as well. So if I go back to our user routes, where's that? User routes. I don't know what kind of requests. Maybe we'll make it a delete request. Because basically we're deleting a cookie, right? So I could say API/users/logout. Okay, and then the method that we want to run is going to be our users.ctl.logout. Correct, and Francis, that's why I put logout here, because it's not like we're deleting a specific user, and I'm not putting an ID over here, right? So yeah, this is not a request to delete a user. Just trying to delete the cookie, that's all. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much the back end, right? Eat the cookie, yummy. So backend's in good shape. Let's close out some of this stuff so that we can get back into the front end side of things, and I'll collapse all of this as well. Okay. So in our client, I think the first thing that's probably best to get out of the way is let's find a way to bounce somebody out of a certain page if they send a request and that request comes back with one of those 401 status codes. So again, just a review, the 401 status code means this person is not authenticated. They haven't signed into our application. Okay, so what we're going to use is this thing called an interceptor. So Axios has this concept of interceptors, and what they allow us to do is basically intercept the request or the response and do something specific based on those things. So here, if we want to intercept the response in some way, we can borrow this code and set it up. Can anyone tell me what they think that we're going to want to do if a status code of 401 comes back from the server? Someone? Error, return error. Promise? A callback. Yeah. Well, how about we just navigate them to the login page? Right? Sounds pretty simple. Let's just get them out of there, send them back to login. So we don't currently have a login page. I'll just create kind of a little stub for one. So we'll go into our source, go into views, and we'll just say login.js. I'm going to import React from React. Okay. Probably also we'll need some other stuff from here, right? We'll need use state because I'm bound to have a form on this page, or two forms if I'm doing login and reg in one shot. And let's just export a default function called login. It's not going to take in anything for right now, right? But we're just going to return out something indicating that we're on the login page. So h1 login reg. Okay, now I need to add this to my my app.js, right? So let's import this new view that we just created. Import login from /login. Okay, and then down here inside my router, actually, we have a little bit of an issue in that we set up this base path of cities in one router, but in the other router, I don't have a base path. So this is probably where I want to stick my login component. So we'll say path equals login. Okay, and let's just make sure that's working. So if I go back here and I go to login, I guess my app is not running now. I think maybe we had the back end running, but not the front end. So let me just, darn it. So let's add another terminal here. We'll go into the client. And then npm start, right? Okay, cool. So we're on our login reg page. That was all good. So now what we want to do is we want to establish this whole interceptor thing here. So I'm really just going to copy this code. And where we're going to use it is going to be inside of our app.js. The reason why I'm going to use it there is because I want this to apply to basically all the other routes that get loaded. I want to always be able to intercept those Axios requests so that we can send a person back to login if they're not authenticated. Okay, so I'm going to need to import Axios up here. And then somewhere in here, probably after all my import statements, I'll paste in this here. Okay. All right, and then let me close out this thing on the side. So we're doing axios.interceptors.response. So I'm just intercepting any responses that I get back from my server. And if everything goes according to plan, this first callback function could potentially do something with the response. Now, in our case, if the call goes okay, all I want to do is just return the response. There's not really any reason to do any special processing here. So I can just say response, just return it back, right? There's nothing to do. My second argument for this use function that I'm going to pass is going to be a callback function when there actually is an error. And I think what we're going to do initially is I'm just going to say error. Let's just console log the error so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so I've added this interceptor, and where we're expecting this to apply is going to be on the cities route, because when we hit that cities route, just as a reminder, if I go back to my backend real quick, inside the server, inside of our routes, if we look at cities here, we've applied this extra piece of middleware. So we're saying when we hit the cities route, we want to make sure that this user is authenticated, right? Only then, if this works, will we even do the get all part. Okay, so if that person's not authenticated, we're just going to send back a response indicating so. Okay, so let's give this a shot. Let's try to go to the cities route here. I'm going to open up my console so that we can see what's going on. I go to cities. Okay. So we got a rejection here. We got a network error. That was cool. Let me just check what we actually saw here. So why is it saying that there was like no response here? Let me just double check our server real quick. Okay, the server's running okay. So it looks like we got back this error. I'm just trying to see what the response code was. Access control allow origin has a header value, localhost 4000 that is not equal to the supplied origin. Did we not have cores in this? Sure seems like we did, no? Oh, whoops. All right. So we got to be careful here because we said the origin was localhost 4000, but actually it's our server that's running on 4000. Our client is running on 3000. Okay. So let's try that again. Okay, good. So this time we're still getting an error, but it's saying that the request failed with status code 401, right? That was the actual error. So now how do I get the actual, we can reject with the error, but the error, I should be able to get something out of it, right? Hang on 1 second, let me close this. All right. So let's say this. If we get an error, instead of console logging, oh, I've got something in the chat, hold on. Catch the error. Yeah, we could catch it. Let's try this. Let's just try to navigate them back to the login page, right? So I'm going to say navigate to /login. I don't have the navigate function in this available in this file. Oh, yes, I do, actually. Never mind. All right, so I don't have to worry about anything there. Let me just close this out. Cool. Let's see if we can get this working. Cities. Uh-oh. Why is it saying that this is uncaught? Because I intercepted it, no? Promise.reject, error, okay. Falls outside the range. All right, so inside the city's view, let's see what we want to do. Oops. So we have our .then, .catch. I'm just going to console log it so that we don't get that error, right? Let's try this again. So if I go to cities, you can see that it is indeed bouncing me back to the login reg, right? All right, any questions on this? So right now, at least we're effectively keeping them out of that page, essentially, right? Based on what's coming back from the API. So the API is saying, hey, you're not authenticated, so I'm really not going to give you that list of cities. And then our front end is handling that here with this interceptor, because we're saying if we get an error in our response, let's just navigate them back here. Questions? All right. If you guys feel good about this, let me close this out. Interceptors is catching errors. Yeah, essentially, right? So it's allowing us to basically intercept errors here. So we can say we're intercepting our response, and then if we get some kind of an error here, we can respond to it in a certain way. Can only be used for errors? No, it can be used for other things too. Because see this first callback here, in fact, let me make this a little bit more clear. The first callback is something that we may want to do with the response. So this callback is for a successful request. So I could do something else with the response if I wanted to. This callback is if the response had an error. Make sense, Albert? Okay, so implied then and catch. Yeah, you can think of it that way. These are really just callbacks, but yeah, it's kind of like if we were doing a promise type situation, we would have our dot then and then our dot catch. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way of thinking of it. All right. So basically what we need to have is we need to have some sort of login form on here, right? Okay, so maybe we'll have some state up in here, right? We'll say const email set email equals use state. Set that to a blank string initially. Okay, we'll do the same thing for password. Okay, cool. Now down here, we're going to have our form. So because we've got some different things, I'm just going to put everything within these little fragment tags here. This is where we'll have our form. And then inside here, we'll have a couple inputs. So I'll do a div here. Inside the div, we'll have a label. This will be email. This will be input. Okay, so name is email. We'll say type. Actually, I'll leave that off. Because we're not really trying to apply front-end validations right here. We're trying to let our back-end do all the work to make sure that we're catching everything. So name value is going to equal email, right? And I'm getting that from the state that I've set up here. And then I'm probably going to want to have an on change. We haven't written that one just yet. Oops. All right. You know what? I'm not even gonna write that up here. I'm just gonna write it down here. So I'm gonna say we're gonna take in an event. And then here I'm going to set email to be the event.target.value. Okay. And then I'm gonna copy this down so that we have password too. This is the password. This one we're probably going to want to give a type so that we see those little circles, those bullets. Okay, and this should be password. And then this is going to be set password, right? Okay, then down here, we're just going to have a little submit button. Submit. It still says email in the label. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Cool, so we've got our form. Let's take a look at it real quick. Email and password. Looks pretty awesome. All right. Now what we need is we're going to need probably an error as well, just in case. I mean, really the only kind of error that we're looking for is going to be that 400 status, right? Doesn't matter if the email is wrong or if the password is wrong. Either way, we may have an error. So I'll say const error, or we'll just say error set use state against blank string. Okay, and now we need to have some kind of a submit handler for the form, right? So we'll say function handle submit. Everybody, what's that going to take in? A callback. Event. Very good, Lawrence. It's going to take in an event. And what's the first thing we need to do? Prevent default. Nice. PD. PD for short. I like it. Event.prevent defaults. Okay. Cool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to want to send this information to our backend, right? So we're actually going to need Axios again. So import Axios from Axios. Okay. The other thing is I'm probably going to need my my navigate function, because if I successfully log somebody in, I'm thinking let's just send them to the main cities page. So let's say import navigate from @reach router. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say axios.post, and the place that we're sending this to is going to be API/users/login. Okay, everybody, what's that going to return me? Prom P. We'll just develop our own little like shorthand lingo. It's going to return me a P. Good. Promises. Promise. Cool. So that gives me a promise. So I've got my typical .then and my typical .catch. Oops. Okay. So if I get some kind of an error, what I'm going to want to do is I'm probably going to set and I'm just going to say, please check your credentials, like that. Okay, but if this goes through as I'm hoping, then I'm going to do navigate to /cities. Okay. Now, one thing to point out here is that if we're setting the error, we may want to remove that error when they first submit the form, right? Or when they subsequently submit the form. So if they already have an error present, let's go ahead and get rid of it. So we'll say set back to a blank string. Okay, now I want to actually apply this submit handler here to the form. So I'll say on submit. We'll pass in this handle submit function. And then I also want to show my error somewhere up in here. So what I can do is I can say, if there's an error, I'm going to use this little operator here to actually display it. So if there's an error, let's go ahead and show this. Otherwise, it won't show anything. So I'll say p style equals double here, color red. And then I'm just going to output the right? Error. Something like that. Translation of double and on line 23. Okay. So this is what some people may call a short circuit operator. And the way that it's evaluated is that if this thing on the left is a falsy value, so if I have an empty string that should be evaluated as a falsy thing, then we will never see this right here. It's almost like a shortening of a ternary operator. So with a ternary operator, we'd say something like, is this true? If it is, we would do something. Otherwise, we would do something else. This is just like, I only want to display this here if this first thing is not falsy. Okay. So there's one other thing that, that I almost forgot to do here is that when we're submitting this post request, we also need to send along some data with it, right? So that's going to be our second thing, and I'll just make it an object that has our email in it and also our password. Okay, so let's give this a quick try here. Let's try to log in with something that we know is wrong. Bad. Can't read data of undefined. Uh-oh. So notice what happened here was because I didn't specify the entire URL, it was assuming that the front part of this URL was localhost 3000, but actually our server is running on 4000, right? Very easy to forget. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so we got a bad request here. Can't read data of undefined. Ah, geez. Does anybody know what's happening? Because I do, but it's like, it's kind of a weird, almost edge casey thing that's going on. You see how two requests were made down in here? First, we made the request to the login endpoint here, and it said that was a bad request, so that worked as expected. But then because of our interceptor was telling us, hey, let's go to the cities route if anything goes wrong. Okay, so let's just make sure that we're getting inside this catch block, right? Yeah, I thought we did two, actually. That's why I was going to do a console log inside here, just to make sure. So inside catch login. Okay. Hopefully your guys' console logging skills are kind of getting better, because you'll notice that you need to log all over the place if things are going wrong. Did I navigate to /? Maybe I did. Let me try that again. It's a good idea. Seems like I tried to go to cities right away, right? and then it came right back to login. But it seems to me like I'm getting into my .then here, which is sort of odd to me. So instead of navigating, let's just drop a console log inside here. So I'm thinking that I shouldn't even be getting that. Undefined. Okay, so in other words, there's no response, but I'm still getting inside of there. Oh, haha. It's because of our interceptor. Okay. So here we're navigating, but we didn't actually return anything, right? So maybe we want to navigate. Oops. So we'll navigate there, but then we'll still return the error so that our request knows that we have one. Let's try that. Okay, so that looked like it pretty much worked, but where did our error go? And why did our catch not run? So we console logged inside .then, right? But we never got inside here. Okay. So this is our log right there. Sorry guys, this is a bit of a disaster. But if anything, I've hoped that you guys have learned some debugging skills. So if we get some kind of a response here, let's see. Tell you what, let's simplify this thing because I want to make sure this works, and I also want to make sure that you guys are able to do this. Let's get rid of our interceptor for now. And let's put that inside of our cities list. Okay. So if this doesn't work, if I go to get my cities, let's just navigate to login. Okay, and I've got that function there, so that's cool. If I go back to login here, then let's simplify this as well. So if everything goes as expected, let's navigate to /cities. Otherwise, let's set the error to this. Okay. All right, so let's try this. Okay, that's looking good. Perfect. And then if I try to go to cities, let's see what happens there. Okay, we still get bounced to login red, so everything is working properly. Let me input a correct credential. Still doesn't work. Boy, everything that could possibly go wrong is going wrong, right? The demo from hell. Hold on one second. So let's check inside of our controllers. We've got this login method. Where are we? I'm going to uncomment this so that we see the token if this works. And let me try to log in one more time. We got our token. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Well, usually the demos aren't this bad, right? Gosh. All right. So we know that most of these things are going right. We've console logged the token. So we're definitely getting down here. And we've set a cookie of that token, right? Let's check our middleware. It seems like something is funky in there. Okay. jwt.verify res.cookies.token. Let me just console log out rec.cookies.token. Okay, I'll get rid of this log right here. Okay, there's our problem then, right? res.cookies.token is undefined. Let's just double check here. Rec.cookies, undefined. Why is this undefined? This seems to be the issue that we're having, right? Client side. Apparently your cookie, this cookie's not set. Cookies.set. Set cookie. Jesus. Express. Res.cookie name value. So that's what we've got. We've got our name, we've got our value, we've got our options in here. And then when we try to authenticate it, our rec.cookies.token, okay. Let's just log out our cookies in general, and let's see if we have anything in there. Object, an empty object. So for some reason, our token is not in there. I'm going to have to look at this and get back to you guys on why this isn't working. Because everything else is basically in place. We can log in here and we can bounce people out properly. It's just, for whatever reason, it seems like that cookie is not sticking. And if I check here, cookies. These look pretty old. Let me just dump these real quick. And then if I refresh that, I have no cookies at all. Yeah, really sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to get back to you on what went wrong here, but for whatever reason, it looks like our cookie is just not. Wasn't it working yesterday though when we were sending Postman requests? Right? That's the thing that's kind of bothering me here is that yesterday we were able to. Okay, so let me just create a delete request to try to log out. Okay, status of success, that's good. And then if I try to go and get my cities, should reject because I've cleared the cookie, right? It's telling me I'm unauthorized. Let me try to log in here. Success, there's our token. And then if I make this request here, wow. All right. I'm gonna cut this recording. Sorry guys.